Just in recent times, Nigeria is currently facing a new dimension of insecurity, including terrorism, kidnapping, armed banditry, and all of that. And according to several national newspapers in Nigeria, forest reserves are soon becoming hideouts for criminal activities, for criminals and perpetrators of evil, because of their vastness and their remoteness. We understand that to be a thing. But then again, the president of this country, Nigeria, promised to more deployment of forest guards to address the menace. But I personally believe that the way out is adopting technology, and I'm going to explain that in the course of today's edition of Plant a Decade Initiative. You're welcome. This is Plant a Decade Initiative, a program that is bifurcated in goal, having two goals. The first is to plant 10,000 trees, which we are currently doing, and the other is to bridge the information and knowledge gap on climate education in the country Nigeria, and yes, to the rest of Africa as we have it. If we adopt technology and innovation into forest management in Nigeria, it will become a two-edged spear that can work two functions. The first function is going to be that it's going to act as a surveillance system of checking the perpetrators hiding in the forest area, and the other part is going to solve a prominent problem that we call deforestation. The rate of deforestation in this country is about 3.7% according to United Nations annually, and that is a lot to compare with other standards. If we bring into the context of this course innovation, AI, technology is going to solve two problems at a go, using one stone to kill two birds. So it suggests that we need to have a conversation on technology and AI in forestry. That is the topic for today. And I would not be doing this alone because I have an erudite scholar in the house, someone who has really done so much, especially in the space of the forestry sector in the United States of America, in person of Jensen, but he's also the owner as well as the principal forester at Ironwood Forestry. I'm going to show a video of what they do to get us into the conversation today. Jensen presenting Ironwood Forestry.
Arizona. Arizona is beautiful. It is our treasure, our joy, our adventure. This is where we live, work, play, and where we explore. But most importantly, it is our future. To protect our forest for future generations, we must actively manage and restore it. Since 2020, Ironwood Forestry has been introducing new and innovative solutions for forest restoration in Arizona.
We mark the trees to communicate to the logger which trees to cut and which trees to leave. The more efficient we can make that, the better. We're using Ironwood Forestry's proprietary paint sprayer that is more efficient and uses significantly less paint. We're also digitally documenting every tree that we mark. By the end of the project, we will have a map of every tree that will remain after the logger comes in and thins it out. My favorite part of marking is being right here in the field, being able to visualize what the forest will look like in the future. Not everyone gets to see this, and we really want to share it with everyone.
Ironwood Forestry is making that a reality by combining boots-on-the-ground data collection with LiDAR technology. After a project is marked, it is then scanned with a mobile LiDAR scanner. When this scan is combined with our tree maps, we can digitally remove the trees that will be cut, giving us an unprecedented look into the future. We're able to see exactly what the forest will look like. This digital window into the future can be used collaboratively by stakeholders to achieve the desired outcome.
We need to embrace innovative ideas that improve efficiency, lower costs, and improve access to data.
And I think the other big part is it's going to help stakeholders see the before and the after without actually cutting the trees. So everybody will get a real good idea of what it's going to look like after the trees are removed, but before the trees are removed, so we can all see what's going to happen before it actually happens.
In addition to visualizing the future forest, we also have a scan of every tree to be removed. This provides important information for the logger.
So LiDAR technology is really exciting. What we can do with that is save a ton of time, money, and energy by using technology instead of boots on the ground to go do layout work, to do preparation. to do almost everything that goes into the startup of a timber harvest. We can do a lot of that using this LiDAR technology, which is really exciting. We're looking forward to what's coming.
Forest restoration is a complicated process with many differing perspectives. To be successful, we must work together.
Throughout the history of forest restoration in Arizona, the best times, the most productive times, are when people work together and compromise and come together around shared common interests. And I think that this is one of those times where we have to return to that core value of working together to help save these forests from the threat of climate change and wildfire that the future holds.
Ironwood Forestry's complete suite of innovations work together to provide forest restoration solutions. Arizona forests face many challenges and an uncertain future. What is certain is that we must face these challenges together. At Ironwood Forestry, we believe the future is just that, together.
Of course, we have to talk about the owner, just a brief of what he has done. He's a person who has a mission to drive innovation, efficiency, and capacity in forest restoration in the Southwest United States, and encompasses developing better equipment, new digital tools, and using creative thinking to reinvent workflows and methodologies. He invests a great deal of time in providing opportunities and pathways for young professionals entering forestry, and that is where we'll start the conversation from today. I was very impressed when I saw what he was doing, especially as a youth. I felt this is something I could do. And then it led me into some of the AI research, checking out how to use the Luma.ai and a 3D point picture of whatsoever, maybe trees, for instance, which I'm currently on, to show some of the dimensions of it. It's quite fascinating, interesting, you would agree with me, to see how well we can manage our forest resource base, especially in Nigeria. We need to really talk about innovation at this point in time. Every other sector is clamoring for innovation, is clamoring for adoption of AI and other technological means into their scheme, into their businesses, into their profession, and we need to do that as well. We need to have this conversation. That's why we have Jensen today to educate us, to help us into some of these things. Very importantly, I've had conversations with him and I was more than impressed. And can we bring innovation, AI, into forestry? You will get to know if that is possible, and you get to know how beautiful that is. You get to know the important things to note, one, start, and to also continue as well. You also see that there are so many people doing these things, especially in the developed climes like we have it in the United States, and you also can follow suit. So today, join me as I welcome the owner and the principal forester of Ironwood Forestry, Jensen. Hello, Jensen.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for having me. I'm very pleased to be on your program. I'm also quite impressed with your enthusiasm and your work. So it's always great to work with other very passionate people that care about forestry in their country. So I live in the United States. I live in Arizona, and our forests here are quite a bit different than what you and your viewers may be used to. But it's very exciting to share what I'm working on with you and to see how maybe the same technologies can be used for different purposes to help both of us. In the American West and the Southwest West in particular, our problem is catastrophic wildfire. Wildfire is a very, very big problem here. And as you can see on these two maps, there is a strong overlap between the wildfire activity that we've seen recently and public land ownership. So on the top in the red is federal land ownership. And so in order to address this management problem, we have to address it not only on private land, which has a lot more flexibility, potentially resources as well, but primarily on public land, which can be very difficult due to regulation and other challenges. Here's a picture of my home in Flagstaff, Arizona. This is the San Francisco Peaks. Last year, we had a very, very, very large fire, burned a good part of the mountain. And so these fires are not, out in the wilderness. They are out in the wilderness, but they're also very close to home and causes many other problems. On steep slopes like this, if the forest burned, then you have problems with flooding and mudslides and loss of drinking water, which is very, very important in the arid southwest. One of the primary causes of this problem is 100 years of mismanagement, where we had the preconceived notion that more trees was better, and so we put out all of the fires, and the trees were allowed to grow. And we started historically in very open forests with fewer large trees, and now we have many, many smaller trees. And we've now learned the folly of this, where this is a primary driver of many of these fires. Fire behavior is very complicated, as you can see on this fire behavior triangle on the right. It's infinitely complex with weather, topography, and fuel. But we also have a more simple fire triangle where fire can only exist if you have oxygen, heat, and fuel. And there's not a lot that we can do about oxygen or heat. Heat is ignition. That could be from human-caused ignition with campfires, but also lightning strikes can cause ignition. So we cannot stop the ignition entirely, and so we have to focus on the fuels component. To that end, we have a lot of very large initiatives surrounding forest restoration to remove the small diameter trees that have overgrown in the forest and to return it to a historical state that can accept low severity fire. The forest on the left, this is the same place before and after treatment, and you can see on the left there's lots of very, very small unhealthy trees that will carry a fire up into the crown to destroy the forest. And on the right, after restoration, the grass will carry low severity fire through, and the trees will survive and create a healthy ecosystem. To do this on public land is very, very complicated. This is just one workflow of many workflows that are required to treat a project. It can take many, many years, easily 10 plus years of planning. So it's very, very complicated. What I have circled here in yellow is the part that my company has started with, that is what we originally were created to perform these services. So after the project is initiated, we'll be hired to take the silvicultural prescription and lay it out using just physical paint, literal paint. We'll paint the trees that either need to be cut or paint the trees that need to be kept, and that communicates to the operator and to the loggers which trees to cut, so that they know that the correct prescription is being implemented. The first innovation that I introduced was an improved paint sprayer. This was important to me because this paint is very, very expensive, and if you can reduce the cost of the paint, the usage of the paint, if you can conserve the paint, then we can save money and prepare more acres for treatment. It also has the side benefit that it looks very, very nice. We introduced an adjustable spray nozzle so that it uses a lot less paint and it looks very nice. It looking nice is important to me because I take a lot of pride in my work, and I want that to show through, and I think that it does. After I introduced the paint sprayer, I started documenting every tree that we marked and implementing digital marking guides. So here we have this sort of groupy, clumpy arrangement that we're trying to implement on the ground that mimics the historical nature of the forest. And you can see in the white those groups that I've planned out. Then you can also see the trees that we've marked in those orange dots, and we put the diameter of that tree on that record so that we have very, very good documentation of what is out there to ensure that we've met those prescriptions. On the right is a map of a sale that I did in 2021, and this was the first project that I did this on the entire project, and it was very, very exciting because it really is the beginning of census level management, where you're really looking at every single tree on the landscape for management and documenting that. And it really is a very high level of precision. So I know that after this project is implemented, that there will be exactly 15,832 trees remaining, and the diameters and locations of all of those trees. So this brought up the question, well, how does this compare with other initiatives, primarily aerial and ground-based LiDAR? So for those of you that do not know what LiDAR is very similar to radar, which uses radio waves. However, it is using laser beams to create a cloud of points. And if that point cloud is dense enough, then a picture becomes apparent, and you can use software to separate and measure those trees to get a very clear picture of what you have out in your project. So we started taking our techniques that were developed in the field, boots on the ground, and synergizing that with remote sensing technology that was available. This was our first result. We merged the data of the trees that we were keeping, represented in orange, just very low resolution aerial LiDAR. And here's our first picture at a future visualization of that stand. It's difficult, especially for non-specialists, to understand what's going on. This is a top-down view of the canopy. But I knew that if we had higher resolution LiDAR, then we could get a more complete picture that really taps into this spiritual connection that people have with the forest, and not just the scientific and data-driven connection. Of course, with the computer, you can color these point clouds to look more realistic. Same thing as I showed you before, because we knew which trees that we were designating to keep and to cut, can interact with that data set, attribute those trees to remove the trees digitally that will be cut, so that you can see this is what the project will look like. And you can take this to the public and your stakeholders to make sure that everybody is on board with the management. And if there's any problems, it can be changed before the first tree is even cut. Future of this technology is accelerating very, very quickly. And you can colorize the point clouds for a very, very realistic rendering of this. And now with new neural radiance field technology and Gaussian splatting, it is almost indistinguishable from real life. And as this matures very, very quickly, we'll have the same capabilities with the LiDAR to measure and segment, so that you can have just very precise planning to share with your stakeholders what you plan on doing in your management. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I'll leave you with this boot print, which spells out the letters GSD, get stuff done. We started in the field, and we hope to integrate this technology also into the field for the best management practices, and keeping the boots in the ground and working with other passionate individuals to get stuff done. Thank you.
Get stuff done, especially when it comes to the involvement of forestry as a youth in Nigeria. Yes, it's quite amazing. I was going to sum up my questions into a few, and that's exactly what I would do. You understand how that your place, the endemic, if so to say, problem you have with the forest resource base or the forest management in the United States is fire. But that is, just like I said last time, there is different strokes for different folks. What you have there as a problem is not what we have here as a problem. The major problem in the forest sector here is deforestation. And another problem associated with deforestation is lack of data. And that's exactly where I want us to drive this conversation again too. You spoke of the fact that you had problems with wildfires in the United States, especially in Arizona. I remember you were talking about that quite importantly. And one of the ways to solve that, to track the fire, is adopt the use of innovation, artificial intelligence. For instance, using a surveillance system, particularly, or using drones to check out the places where there are smokes, or using smoke detector sensors and all that can help us maybe at least find a way of first, alarming us, one, or perhaps to even tackle the situation in the real sense. But that is on the other side. The flip side of it is the African society, Nigeria to be precise. We have problems with data. And I know for us to even move forward, we need data. And how can we get data? We can bring to use the use of innovation and artificial intelligence into forestry. It's quite important. It's quite heavy in my heart. I feel we should also get things done in this regard. What exactly is artificial intelligence? But I will just try to read this definition that I got, that it refers to the simulation of approximation of human intelligence in machines, programmed into machines, into softwares, into programs, that can serve a purpose of helping humanity at the end of the day. My first question to you now, Eli Jensen, who can use artificial intelligence? Because there's been a conversation, there's been a doubt as to who can use it. People believe you have to be learned, like in machine learning, before you can use, or to even talk about artificial intelligence. So there's this hoax kind of an information that, oh yes, you can just run into artificial intelligence. But I know there are some simple artificial intelligence systems anyone or many persons can come into. So who can use artificial intelligence? Is it people that have a background in artificial intelligence, in the computer software programming, machine learning, or who can actually get into this too?
Great question. Certainly, if you have a background in computer science or machine learning, you certainly have an advantage, and you can be an early adopter and be ahead of the curve a little bit, and perhaps even participate in the development of some of these tools. But there's a very, very strong push, I think, in the computer science community to keep everything as open source and modular as possible. I've heard it called maybe brand agnostic. You know, everything should be interchangeable with anything else. And so perhaps there are very highly developed tools that you do need maybe knowledge of coding or Python to utilize, or perhaps even just more advanced graphic user interfaces. But there's also a lot of tools out there that are free and open for everyone to use and are very, very simple to use. Some of them are just as simple as uploading a video. If you just take a video of an object of interest, you can upload that to create a 3D model generated by AI, or anybody could go and talk to ChatGPT, as we all know is the big one, and that's free for use. So there's a lot of tools that are available to all of us to use, and I think it's even up to us and our responsibility to synergize that with our problems that we have as individuals, and to see how that those can be applied to each of our use cases.
Very much for that. Quite interesting to note what you've said now. Let's advance this conversation by adopting what you just said, or trying to simulate what you've said into the context of the African society, particularly Nigeria. The rate of deforestation is about 3.7% annually. Population explosion is also a thing to discuss in Nigeria. We have teeming population to feed. We would more likely expand agriculture, which of course would affect the forest resource base, which has done that in many times. My project, I saw how that happened, how that there's now more as against about 30 years back is different from what we have now. What we have now is just a fraction of our forest resource base, because we have had to deforest a lot of area for agricultural expansion. But of course, what would you say if there are teeming population to feed? And not just that, people cut down trees because we need to build houses and you need to use these furnitures. That's another one. The continuing side of that is to talk about the fact that people would need to clear more forests so they can build structures, houses. People encroaching into the forest area, protected areas like we used to call them, not protected any longer, because many of these primary forests have been, altered, have been influenced by human anthropogenic effect and activities. Obviously, I can tell that for a fact. I have that in my project. But also, we need to talk about this now. Know about some, like you said, some easy to use software, AI systems like conversational AI, and just like you mentioned as well, ChatGPT, where you can just type something and then you get information. How about we get into further conversation of having an average person can use a mobile phone? How can we, I think I saw at some point someone talking about that, how we can have apps, we can have softwares on a mobile phone that is going to scan the diameter at breast height, the height of a tree, the crown diameter, and every of the structures around trees. We need to get that into our understanding as well. Students are going to watch this, professionals are going to watch this. Help us into how you do a bit of that, or how we can get into a bit. Perhaps we need to do a bit of machine learning to get our informations right, to be able to code, to get the data correctly, to have just your camera and then link to a software that can read a particular tree or a group of trees in the forest. How many trees are in a particular plot of land just from an aerial view? Maybe not your phone now, maybe through a drone or a LiDAR system, satellite imagery. Help us into how to also engage that in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. It may seem that you and I have different forestry problems. I think that in a way that's true, where we need to cut more trees and Africa needs to cut fewer trees. But the end result is really the same, where we are losing our forests either to fire or deforestation. And I think that's the story that is really the same even across both sides of the world. And so that I think that what this technology is really important for us to realize is that it is exactly what you are talking about, is it is sharing data, collecting more data, and truly telling a story about what is happening in our community. Many of those things that you mentioned, housing needs, resource needs, agriculture needs, even those that are not focused specifically in forestry, they still care. We just all are very, very focused on what is immediately in front of us and our own problems from day to day. And so it's very, very important that we're able to share our story with our community so that we can show them, here, this is what is happening, so that we can get everyone involved. So what is very important on how we do that, I think, is take whatever tools that are available to you. Maybe it's the free version of these softwares that are available. Maybe it's ChatGPT, and use them to solve whatever problem you can imagine at the time, to go through that iterative process to learn how these tools can be used. Because even here in the United States, there's a lot of support for using these tools in forestry, but the mining industry and the construction industry, they're both much, much larger than forestry. And so all of the tools are being developed for those industries and not for forestry. And so we're lacking a lot of tools. And so I'm using these softwares and using them for purposes that they're not intended for, but then communicating that to the developer so that those tools can evolve in ways that are helpful to us. So that is my recommendation to you and to anyone else, is use them to the best of your ability, and then continue to go through that process of attempting and communicating, how can this tool be better? And then that tool will evolve, hopefully to help you solve your problem.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, I'm interested in one other question. Last year, I remember you won a leadership prize as a member of SAF, Society of American Foresters. I saw that on your LinkedIn account. Quite impressive, the things you're doing. I can attest to that. I've seen some of your updates. Quite amazing, quite motivational for many of us. What exactly is the forest situation, forest education in the US? I want you to give us an overview of that. What exactly the profession is like, as well as the education of the profession. What is like the readiness of people to listen to you or to take the course forestry as a thing? Because in Nigeria, when I finished from university, I had so many of my junior colleagues calling me and asking me, what can I do with forestry? They were confused. They were in limbo as to what to do. They did not know where else to turn. Some had to take another exam to go into another field because they felt like there's no prospect in this course. If you ask them, they might be right, because they've seen the trajectory from time immemorial in Nigeria, how that there are not many tools on ground, especially at this stage in time, jet age, and then we are still lagging behind technological advancement. No. So I want to know what it is like to study forestry or practice forestry as a professional, just like you are. What is it like to study in the US? Perhaps we could have a common solution for some of these problems that we are facing.
Great question. Thank you for that. Forestry education in the United States, I see another very, very similar, a lot of similarities to what you've described to me. There are a lot of young people, 17, 18, 19 years old, that see the problems in the world, in forestry, in the United States and internationally, and very, very deep down in their heart, they really, really just want to make a difference. And so they go to university a lot of times very fearlessly, without thinking, what is the job that will be ready for me at the end of graduation? And right now, the job market is very, very good for students. We are in a very severe labor shortage and skill shortage in forestry, but the pendulum always swings the other way. It's a back and forth. When I graduated, there were no jobs. That is why I started my own company, because I didn't have a choice. But by doing that and sort of growing in my early career through the field, I learned a very, very important lesson and gained perspective that maybe things are a little bit backwards in the way that we're training young people, where they know that they want to make a difference and So they say, well, I'm going to be a forester. So they choose a job title and they go to school and then they pursue that job title. A lot of times they'll get that job title and then they think about, well, what am I going to do? And I would really propose that that's backwards and we need to look at things the other way around, which I feel that I do a lot, and you as well, watching your work, which is start with the problem and adopt a mission and work towards solving that mission. Because if you adopt a mission, then maybe you are blessed to have the resources and the official title that can help you towards that. But if you're serious in that mission, then you're not going to wait for permission, or you're not going to wait for anybody to tell you to get started. You're going to look for ways, just as you've done and continue to do, on how you're going to solve your mission and achieve success in that mission. So I really think that that's another common thread, and another one of those stories that we need to share with both of our communities on how to approach these problems.
Likewise, just a strain of question from what you've said too. What is the involvement of the United States Department of Forestry into the profession? How well is the government supporting startups, particularly in the forestry profession? How well is the government involved or interested in the forestry discourse or forest management entirely?
Sure. So the United States Department of Agriculture houses the United States Forest Service, which is the main management agency for forestry in the West. In the Eastern United States, it's a lot higher proportion of private land. So in the West, it's dominated by government agency. So as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, to address these problems, it must be done through the lens of public management. So to answer your question, they're a very, very large part, and that's both a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of government regulation that can be difficult, and a lot of people don't want to have the patience to go through that, but it's very, very important. They're very, very supportive of our missions and our initiatives to restore the forests and to treat things properly. There are some pathways that I think still need to be built out for kind of novel approaches. There's not a lot of support for small entrepreneurship in the public forestry sector. So there's some work to be done there, so that if there's a young person that is passionate and needs the space to spread their own wings in their own framework and company, that they have a clear pathway of how they can contribute to mission success. So there's a lot of support, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done so that everybody can participate to contribute with their full potential.
Really would not need to go back to, it seems as though you pinpoint every of the questions and then you spread it out and the answers all. More like one fits all kind of answer is what you're giving. Quite impressive of the fact that you have been in the profession and you're practicing, which obviously is showing in your conversation as well. Thank you very much for that. Also, I would like to ask one more question before we go. How about you speak to forestry students or professional or anyone who is open and intending to practice forestry now, later, or much later, especially now that the old discourse has been around planting trees. We understand the situation of the climate crisis. We understand how that trees and forestry are very consequential to the discourse of climate action.
Great question. I would say to be bold and to be as fearless as you can tolerate being. If you're solving important challenge, we may not have the answers. We may not know exactly what to do and where that solution lies. And it requires a lot of exploration and investigation. And if you introduce something new, the only guarantee I can give you is that somebody will doubt you and somebody will resist you, because that is what human beings do. We just resist change. It's in our DNA to do so. And so to expect that that is going to happen and to embrace that difficulty, it's very helpful if you have like-minded individuals with you. So find those that are passionate like you and work with them to give you strength when you're doubting yourself, because that is going to happen too. And just approach your mission less so with fear and more so with fear of regret. Ask yourself, am I going to regret not going after this with everything I've got? In my experience, most of the time, if you take that big risk, it's not as scary as you may think. So just put everything that you have into it and be fearless and just go for it.
Wow. quite fascinating. You mentioned something about, adapting to change, embracing change. Very important. I've always had a mantra, I say it a lot of time, that it's not the strongest of animals that survive, but the one that is most responsive to change, which is why we all need to respond to change. The world is changing at a very fast rate. We need to also get in tune with the changes, the dynamism in the world. Thank you so very much for joining this edition of the Plant a Decade Initiative, a program that is actually bifurcated into two main goals: planting 10,000 trees, as well as bridging the information and knowledge gap on climate education in Nigeria. So many of the times we've had to delve into forestry, very importantly. So yes, an average person would want to consider forestry, I believe, from what you've said, quite interesting to note, motivational as well. One more question before I say my goodbyes to you today. And the question is quite simple. What do you project as the future of forestry come 2025?
Future of forestry in 2025. I think that the neural radiance fields, that very hyper-realistic visualization, I think that is what will be the future. And the reason that I think that is because it is very, very accessible. All you need is a camera from your smartphone or a digital camera to participate in that sort of technology. You do not need a very, very expensive laser scanner. So I think that is what the future will be.
Wow. Yes, very well. It's been a wonderful time with you, Eli Jensen. Thank you so very much. You wanted to mention the leadership prize you won. Would you like to say that before we go?
Oh, certainly, yes. Last year, I won the 2023 National Young Forester Leadership Award from the Society of American Foresters. And the year before, I won this one right here at the local level. So it's a very nice sequel, and very honored to be recognized by my colleagues.
In few words, what do you do to deserve all of these accolades and prizes and awards? The few things you think you are doing and you think another person can also emulate.
I'm very, very stubborn. So if I say I'm going to do something, you can put money on it. It's going to happen. It may take longer than I say, but you can count on it happening. And that makes me maybe sometimes difficult to work with, but it works. And maybe it makes it difficult for my wife to be married to me as well. Just do it.
Just do it. Get stuff done. Very important, right? I'm taking that cue from you again today. I'm going in that trend. I'll be stubborn for the good purpose anyway. Don't be afraid. I'll be stubborn for the good reasons, and I'll do just that. My name is Anuoluwapo, Idowu, and it's been a wonderful time and session on Plant a Decade Initiative with Eli Jensen. We've discussed topics around integration of artificial intelligence, innovation, technology into the forestry sector, or perhaps forest resource management in the world. That's exactly what we have discussed today. March 24th is going to be International Day of Forest, and it's quite important that the topic is still almost the same: innovation at this point in time. Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching this episode. Bye for now.